Emily Carter had not expected anything unusual that night. The rain came softly, tapping against the windows of their Connecticut home while warm light filled the kitchen. Dinner dishes soaked in the sink. The smell of lemon soap mixed with roasted chicken and herbs. It was an ordinary ending to an ordinary weekday, exactly the kind she and her husband, Daniel, had lived inside for years. 10 years of marriage built routines you could almost predict by the clock. Daniel always loosened his tie the moment he stepped through the door. Emily always played quiet music while cleaning up. He usually joked about the news. She usually teased him for reading the same sports headlines twice. Tonight, he did none of that. He sat at the kitchen table with his jacket still on, hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold. His eyes were fixed on nothing. Emily noticed it right away. "Hey," she said gently, glancing back at him while scrubbing a pan. "You okay?" Daniel blinked, as if waking from a dream. "Yeah. Just tired." The answer came too fast. She rinsed her hands and dried them on a towel. When she turned around, he still hadn't moved. "You didn't touch your tea." "I forgot." That made her frown. Daniel never forgot tea. She walked over and sat across from him, studying his face. There were faint lines near his eyes that hadn't been there years ago. Stress, maybe. Or time. Or something heavier. "You've been quiet all night," she said. He gave a small shrug, but his shoulders stayed tense. "I've just been thinking." "About work?" "No." "Your brother?" "No." He sighed and rubbed his thumb against the mug. Emily leaned forward. "Okay. Now you're officially worrying me." He let out a short breath that sounded like he'd been holding it for hours. "There's something I want to talk to you about." Her stomach tightened. Daniel didn't speak like that unless the subject mattered. "All right," she said. "What is it?" He looked at her, then away, then back again. "I don't want you to take this the wrong way." The words made her pulse quicken. "Just say it." He swallowed. "What would you think," he asked slowly, "if I said I needed some space?" The kitchen seemed to go silent. Emily blinked. "Space?" "Not like moving out," he added quickly. "Not ending things." "I just..." He stopped, searching for words. "I feel like we've been drifting." Her chest tightened. "Drifting how?" Daniel leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling for a second as if hoping the right sentence might appear there. "Like we live next to each other instead of with each other," he said. "Like everything is schedules and chores and sleep." Emily's throat went dry. "We're busy," she said carefully. "That doesn't mean we're unhappy." "I know. I'm not saying we are." He paused. "I just don't know if we're connected the way we used to be." The word "used to" hung between them. Emily forced herself to breathe. "When did you start feeling like this?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Months ago. Maybe longer." Her heart sank. "And you didn't say anything?" "I didn't want to hurt you." "That's not how that works, Daniel." He winced slightly at her tone. "I know. I messed that part up." She folded her arms, trying to keep herself steady. "What exactly does space mean to you?" He hesitated. "Sleeping in the guest room for a bit. Taking time to think. To figure out what's wrong with me, or with us." "With us," she repeated quietly. "That's not what I meant. But that's how it sounds." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Emily, I'm not trying to leave. I just feel stuck. Like I wake up and the days blur together. I love you, but lately it feels like we're running on memory instead of something alive." The honesty hurt more than if he had shouted. Emily stared at the small crack in the corner of the table, the one they had promised to fix years ago and never did. "So your answer is distance?" "No," he said quickly. "My answer is trying something before resentment grows." I don't want to wake up one day and realize we never talked about this. She looked at him again, really looked. His jaw was tight. His hands trembled slightly. This wasn't casual. This was fear. Still, it didn't make her chest hurt any less. I thought we were okay, she whispered. We are okay, he said. I just want us to be better than okay. Emily pressed her lips together, fighting the sting behind her eyes. She had noticed the quiet nights. The way conversations ended faster than they used to. How weekends became errands instead of adventures. She just hadn't thought it meant this. I don't want to sleep in different rooms, she said. I know. I don't want to feel like I'm losing you. You're not. But he didn't reach across the table. That scared her most. The rain grew heavier outside. Emily stood slowly. I need a minute. He nodded. Take all the time you need. She walked into the living room and stared out the dark window, watching water streak down the glass. Her reflection looked smaller than usual. Space. It sounded simple. It felt like a door cracking open somewhere behind her. When she came back, Daniel was still there, waiting. I don't know what to say yet, she admitted. That's okay. I don't like this. I don't either. They held each other's gaze. The marriage she thought was solid suddenly felt fragile, like something that could shift with the wrong word. I'm not agreeing to anything tonight, she said. I'm not asking you to, he replied. But the question was already in the air. And neither of them could take it back. Emily woke up that morning to an unfamiliar quiet. The bedroom felt empty, even though the sunlight poured in through the curtains. The warmth she usually felt next to Daniel's body was gone. The other side of the bed, which had always been soft and inviting, was flat and cold. Her heart sank as she remembered his words from the night before, space. Daniel had moved into the guest room 2 nights ago. He insisted it was temporary, a way to think and breathe. Emily understood the reason, but the house felt wrong without him. It wasn't that she didn't trust him, or that she doubted his love. It was that every step she took now echoed in the halls, reminding her of absence. She walked from room to room, noticing things she hadn't paid attention to in years. The scratches on the floor where he dropped his keys. The coffee mug he always left on the counter. The little framed photo of them on their wedding day. Each item was a ghost of what used to be ordinary, now a silent reminder that things were different. Even mornings were strange. She made coffee for both of them, but he wasn't there to drink it. The first time she left the plate outside the guest room, she hesitated. Her hand hovered over the door handle, uncertain whether it was an intrusion or a gesture. When he opened the door and thanked her, the polite tone of his voice felt like a small dagger. Not angry, not cold, just distant. That simple thank you reminded her how far apart they had become in just a few days. At work, Emily found herself distracted. Emails blurred together. Her mind kept returning to him, to the way he looked when he sat at the kitchen table. There was a quiet sadness in his eyes that she hadn't seen before. She caught herself scrolling through old photos of them on her phone, pictures from vacations, birthdays, even small weekend outings that had meant the world at the time. A slow, creeping fear began to take hold. She wondered if she had failed to notice the cracks forming in their marriage, if she had been too busy with routines to realize he had started to drift. She couldn't escape the memory of their laughter, the way it used to fill the house. Now, every sound in their home seemed hollow. Even the creak of the floorboards seemed to echo loneliness. Emily tried to reach out, but each interaction with him was careful, measured. He smiled when necessary, nodded when needed, but the warmth, the spark, was gone. She missed it more than she thought she would. One evening, after a long day at work, Emily decided to cook his favorite meal, spaghetti with roasted garlic and basil. She prepared it with care, hoping it might remind him of the comfort they shared. She carried the plate to the guest room door, her hand trembling slightly. She knocked softly and whispered, "Dinner's ready." He opened the door, his expression polite, restrained. Thanks, he said, taking the plate with a small, polite smile. She wanted more than politeness. She wanted the way he used to look at her, full of affection, warmth, and trust. The next day, Emily wandered into the closet while tidying and found an old photo album tucked in a corner. She opened it carefully, dust floating in the sunlight. Their wedding day stared back at her, Daniel lifting her off the floor, both laughing so hard their faces were flushed. The memory hit her like a wave. She remembered every promise, every whispered word, every dream they had shared. A lump formed in her throat. Somehow, the years had crept past, leaving routine and comfort, but also an unnoticed distance. The photo reminded her of everything they had been, and everything they could still be if they found a way back. That night, Emily knocked on his door. "Daniel?" she called softly. He opened it, and the sight of him standing there, alone, made her chest ache. His face was tired, his eyes guarded, but there was a softness there that she remembered. "I just want to understand," she said quietly. She stepped inside. The room smelled like him, familiar yet foreign in his absence. She saw the way he looked at her, hesitant, as if unsure whether she would retreat or reach out. "I don't want to lose you," she admitted, her voice shaking. "I don't want to wake up one day and realize you've already drifted away." Daniel's expression softened. He took a deep breath, words caught somewhere between fear and hope. "I don't want to lose you either," he said quietly. He stepped closer, but didn't reach for her, and that small hesitation spoke louder than any argument ever could. For days, they continued this delicate dance. Words were chosen carefully. Silences were heavy with unspoken thoughts. Emily felt the weight of each moment, realizing how much she had taken for granted, the little things that made a marriage feel alive. She remembered the mornings he made her coffee just the way she liked it, the notes he used to leave on her pillow, the way he always found her hand in the dark. Now, she noticed how much she missed these gestures. She spent the afternoons thinking, walking through their home as if seeing it for the first time. She noticed the sunlight through the curtains, the way the living room furniture created familiar shadows, the faint hum of the refrigerator that had always been background noise. Each sound, each detail reminded her of the life they shared, and how quickly it could feel fragile. By the end of the week, Emily realized that space wasn't just about rooms or distance. It was about noticing absence, understanding silence, and recognizing the slow erosion of attention and care. Daniel's request, while frightening at first, had opened her eyes to how little they had spoken about their feelings in recent years. She saw her own role, her own quiet neglect, and a longing to fix it before it became permanent. Emily didn't know if things could go back to the way they were, but she felt determination rising in her chest. She couldn't force him to stay, but she could choose to fight for what they had. The love that had been steady, sometimes unnoticed, was still there, buried under months of routine and unspoken thoughts. She knew she had to find a way to reach him, to remind him that they were more than two people sharing a house, they were partners, friends, and lovers, capable of choosing each other again. That night, she knocked on the guest room door again. "Daniel, can we talk?" she asked. His eyes softened, and he nodded, inviting her in. They sat together quietly, the soft hum of the heater filling the room. Emily could feel the tension in the air, the carefulness of their words, but also a fragile hope. It was the first step toward rebuilding something she feared might have been lost forever. The weeks that followed tested them both. They navigated this new space between them with care. Conversations became more open, small gestures more intentional. Emily realized that love wasn't just living together, it was noticing each other, listening deeply, and acting with thoughtfulness. Daniel's absence, though painful, had created room for reflection, and in that reflection, Emily discovered both heartbreak and possibility. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine them together again, not just as husband and wife, but as two people who truly saw and valued each other. The quiet of the house no longer felt like emptiness but a canvas, waiting for them to fill it with new memories, renewed attention, and careful love. By facing the distance Daniel had asked for, Emily understood the fragility of their connection. But she also discovered its resilience. And deep inside, she knew that if they could navigate this space thoughtfully, the love that had once been routine could transform into something deeper, stronger, and more intentional than either of them had experienced before. Emily closed her eyes that night and allowed herself a small, hopeful smile. The guest room door was closed, the house quiet, and yet something stirred inside her. Something that whispered that the next chapter of their marriage could be different, better, alive, and full of care. And for the first time in a long while, she believed they could find their way back to each other. Emily had spent nearly a week navigating the quiet distance Daniel had asked for, and the emptiness in the house weighed on her. Every corner, every object reminded her of him, but not in the comforting way it once had. Now, it felt like reminders of what she could lose. Each morning, she woke up alone, and each night, she lay in their bed with half of it cold and empty. She had tried to keep busy, work, errands, small chores, but her mind always drifted to Daniel, to what he was feeling in the guest room, and to the space that now existed between them. It was late afternoon when he asked her to join him on the back porch. The air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of rain from the last storm. The sky stretched wide with soft hues of pink and gold as the sun dipped toward the horizon. Emily's heart skipped a beat as she walked out, unsure what to expect. Daniel was already leaning against the railing, hands tucked into the pockets of his jeans, eyes fixed on the distant tree line. He seemed smaller somehow, more human, stripped of the usual confidence she relied on. "Hi," she said softly, stepping closer. He turned to her, a faint smile flickering across his face. "Hey." They stood together in silence for a few moments, listening to the distant chirp of birds and the gentle rustle of leaves. Emily hugged herself, the cool air brushing against her arms. "I've been afraid to say this," he began finally, his voice low and uncertain. Her chest tightened. She felt a mixture of dread and hope. "Say it anyway," she whispered. Daniel took a breath, and his words spilled out like a river he had dammed too long. "I don't think I wanted space because I'm done with you." Emily blinked. Her stomach twisted. "Then why?" she started. "I wanted space because I miss you," he said, his eyes locking onto hers. "Because somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling like your husband and started feeling like a roommate. I stopped noticing you the way I should, stopped paying attention to us. And instead of talking, I pulled away. I thought distance would make it easier, but it didn't. It made everything louder in my head." Emily felt tears sting her eyes. The house, the quiet, the absence, it all made sense now. His silence wasn't rejection, it was longing misdirected. "You could have told me," she said quietly, though her voice wavered. "I know," he admitted. "I should have. I thought maybe if I had space, I could understand my feelings first. But all it did was make me realize how much I need you. How much I've always needed you." She stepped closer. The warm glow of the sunset brushed against her face, highlighting the worry and hope mingled in her expression. "I'm still here, Daniel. I'm not going anywhere." He hesitated, then took a step toward her. His hands hovered near hers, unsure if they were welcome. "I've been scared. Scared that if I admitted how unhappy I felt, you'd think I didn't love you. That I didn't want us. But I do. I want us more than anything. I just lost my way for a bit." Emily reached out and took his hand without thinking. His fingers felt familiar, warm, alive. A shiver ran through her as the tension between them shifted. "I was afraid," she admitted. "I thought you were preparing to leave, that all this time apart meant the end." Daniel's expression softened. Relief and guilt mixed in his eyes. "No. I was preparing to fight for us. I just went about it the wrong way." They stood on the porch, hands entwined, and for the first time in days, the weight between them felt lighter. The tension that had built over weeks didn't vanish entirely, but it became manageable, like a knot slowly loosening. Emily could feel the love beneath the worry, the familiarity beneath the distance, the history beneath the fear. "I don't want to exist beside you," Daniel said quietly, almost to himself. "I want to live with you. I want to feel you here, not just see you in passing, not just share chores and schedules. I want to choose you every day, the way we did when we were falling in love. Emily nodded, tears spilling freely now. Then let's do that, she whispered. Let's start choosing each other again. Daniel smiled, the tension in his shoulders easing. I want that. I want us back. They spent the next hour on the porch talking, sharing the words that had been trapped in their minds for too long. Every confession, every small truth brought them closer. Daniel admitted how guilty he had felt for pulling away. Emily shared the quiet fear she had carried while he slept in another room. Each revelation was a small stitch, repairing the invisible rift that had grown between them. When they finally went inside, it was almost dark. Emily leaned against him as they walked to the bedroom, a quiet sense of relief surrounding them. There were no grand declarations, no sudden fixes, just two people slowly reconnecting after a week of absence. The simple act of walking together, of sharing space again, felt monumental. That night, Daniel returned to their bedroom. Not with dramatic gestures, not with speeches, but with the quiet presence Emily had missed so much. They lay down together, side by side, and for the first time in days, she felt the warmth of his body and the rhythm of his breathing. Emily realized that love wasn't always about fireworks or constant attention. Sometimes, it was about honesty, about admitting mistakes, about holding on even when things felt fragile. Daniel's request for space had been frightening, but it had opened the door for the real conversation they both needed. They had confronted fears and acknowledged truths that routine and comfort had masked for years. In the days that followed, they moved cautiously, rebuilding what had been strained. Small gestures returned, a shared cup of coffee in the morning, a hand held in passing, laughter in the living room. Their conversations became more open, more intentional. They discussed feelings, desires, and fears without judgment, learning again how to communicate as partners, not just cohabitants. Emily also noticed her own patterns. She realized she had taken too much for granted, letting routines replace attention, letting the busyness of life overshadow the care they both deserved. She started paying closer attention to Daniel, noticing his moods, asking about his day, appreciating his small gestures. Each effort, each moment of mindfulness, built trust and warmth back into the spaces that had felt empty. Daniel, too, adjusted. He planned little surprises, small reminders that he valued her. He left notes, made her favorite drinks, asked questions with genuine interest instead of passing them over. Slowly, the house regained its warmth, and the distance that had loomed so large began to shrink. Emily felt a cautious optimism. The road ahead wasn't without challenges, they still needed to communicate, to be aware, to make effort, but the biggest hurdle had been crossed, they were honest with each other. And honesty, she realized, was far stronger than silence, far more sustaining than routine. On a quiet evening, she found herself sitting on the porch again, Daniel beside her, his arm draped over her shoulder. The sunset painted the sky in soft pinks and oranges, the colors mirrored in the warmth spreading through her chest. She rested her head against him, feeling the rhythm of his heartbeat, and allowed herself to imagine a future that wasn't just safe and familiar, but intentional and alive. This week of distance had been painful, but it had also been necessary. It showed them what they risked losing and reminded them why they had chosen each other in the first place. Emily realized that love wasn't just a feeling, it was a choice, a series of decisions made every day to nurture, protect, and reconnect. And tonight, sitting there with Daniel beside her, she chose him again. No dramatic gestures, no grand promises, just a quiet, deliberate choice to rebuild, to reconnect, and to let their love grow stronger than before. And in that quiet decision, she felt hope, strength, and a warmth she hadn't felt in weeks. It wasn't the end of their struggle, but it was the beginning of something real, something lasting, and something beautifully theirs. The house felt different that night. Daniel had returned to their bedroom, carrying only a pillow and a hesitant smile. Emily watched him stand in the doorway for a moment, unsure if she should laugh, cry, or simply collapse in relief. The tension that had built between them over days of distance was still there, but it was shifting, melting into something fragile but hopeful. Is that allowed? She asked softly, a small smile tugging at her lips. I was hoping you'd say yes, he replied, his voice nervous but warm. She laughed quietly, the sound light and freeing. The sound seemed to make him relax, shoulders dropping, eyes softening. They had spent days apart, navigating the space Daniel had asked for, but now, the act of returning felt like a small victory, a first step back toward each other. For the next few weeks, everything changed, not suddenly, not dramatically, but intentionally. Each morning, they made coffee for each other. Emily started leaving small notes in Daniel's work bag, little messages of encouragement or love. Daniel began to notice more, how Emily tilted her head when she was thinking, how she paused to watch the sunlight fall on the kitchen counter, the way she laughed at small things he barely noticed before. They learned to pay attention again, to choose each other in moments both large and small. Evenings were filled with long walks around the neighborhood. Phones stayed tucked away. Conversations drifted from serious topics to silly memories. They talked about everything they had avoided, fears, regrets, desires, and dreams. Every word shared seemed to untangle a knot that had tightened over months of quiet distance. They laughed again, not just out of politeness or routine, but with genuine warmth, a sound that filled the house like it used to. At first, it felt awkward. There were pauses in conversations, moments of hesitation where they weren't sure how to touch or speak without reopening old wounds. But they faced those moments together, learning again how to be partners, how to communicate with honesty and care. Emily realized that love wasn't just about being close physically, it was about being present, fully, emotionally, and mentally. One night, they curled up on the couch, Emily resting her head on Daniel's shoulder. The room was dimly lit, soft shadows cast by the lamp in the corner. She felt the steady rhythm of his heartbeat and realized how much she had missed this intimacy, not the physical kind, but the comfort of presence. You scared me, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I know, he said quietly, turning slightly so his forehead rested against her temple. I'm sorry for that. She smiled faintly. Next time you feel like that, promise me you won't ask for space first. I promise, he said. I'll ask for you instead. The simplicity of the promise carried more weight than any grand gesture could. It was a reminder that love required courage, communication, and the willingness to face discomfort for the sake of connection. Days became weeks, and each day brought them closer. Daniel planned small surprises, a favorite pastry waiting on the counter, a note tucked into her bag, a simple I love you when she least expected it. Emily, in turn, made sure he felt seen and appreciated, noticing the small things he did, acknowledging his efforts, and expressing gratitude. These little acts built a bridge back to each other, stronger than any conversation alone could. They also faced challenges. Old arguments resurfaced, and sometimes the silence that had once been a refuge threatened to return. But now, they had tools to handle it, honesty, patience, and a renewed commitment to each other. They learned to stop running from discomfort, to speak their fears aloud, and to work together to find solutions. Every disagreement, every difficult conversation became an opportunity to grow closer rather than drift apart. Emily noticed the subtle changes in herself too. She had taken for granted how present she could be, how much effort it took to nurture love, and how easily routine could dull affection. She began to cherish moments with Daniel, whether it was cooking together, watching a favorite show, or simply sitting in silence. These shared moments became rituals that strengthened their bond. One Saturday, they decided to revisit the place of one of their first dates. Walking hand in hand, they laughed about old memories and remembered the excitement they had once felt for each other. The nostalgia wasn't painful, it was a reminder of how far they had come and how much love they still had to give. Emily realized that their relationship had been tested, but the trials had not broken them, they had refined them, sharpened their awareness, and deepened their commitment. That night, back home, Emily prepared a small surprise dinner. Daniel walked in, eyes lighting up at the sight of it. They sat across from each other, eating slowly, savoring both the food and the quiet presence of one another. Conversation flowed easily, no tension, no distance. It felt ordinary, yet extraordinary in its intimacy. After dinner, they sat on the porch again, wrapped in blankets against the cool night air. The stars twinkled above, clear and bright. Emily leaned against Daniel, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't felt in months. "I'm glad we didn't give up," she said. "Me too," he replied. "It was hard, but I think we're stronger now." Emily nodded, pressing her hand into his. "I think so too. I feel like we're really choosing each other again, not just living together out of habit." Daniel smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Exactly. It's intentional now. We see each other, really see each other. And we won't forget it again." The following weeks were filled with small yet meaningful routines. They left notes, planned short weekend trips, and made time for conversations without distractions. Even ordinary evenings became opportunities to connect. Emily noticed how Daniel's laughter filled the rooms again, how his gestures of care were deliberate and frequent, and how the quiet moments between them now carried warmth instead of emptiness. Emily's own growth was evident too. She approached Daniel with more patience, expressed her needs calmly, and made efforts to nurture their connection daily. She realized that love required consistent attention and that it was easy to drift into complacency if effort was neglected. Through this renewed connection, Emily understood that the unexpected request for space had been a turning point. It had shaken them, made them confront fears, and forced both to reflect deeply on their marriage. The distance, while initially painful, had become a catalyst for honesty, understanding, and renewed intimacy. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Emily rested her head against Daniel's chest. The room was quiet, but the silence no longer felt like absence. It was filled with presence, intention, and trust. She felt the steady rhythm of his heartbeat and knew that they had rebuilt something precious, something that had been hidden beneath routine and habit but was now stronger, alive, and intentional. Emily realized that love didn't always need grand gestures or dramatic declarations. Sometimes, it required patience, reflection, and small, consistent choices to nurture it. Choosing each other, every day, had brought them back from the brink and deepened their bond in ways that routine never could. Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "I'm glad we're here," he said. "Me too," Emily replied, smiling softly. "This feels like a new beginning." And in that quiet, deliberate moment, surrounded by the warmth of their home and the calm of the evening, Emily and Daniel understood something vital. Love was strongest when it was chosen, nurtured, and protected. They had faced distance, fear, and uncertainty, and yet here they were, together, intentional, and full of hope. The unexpected request that had once threatened to pull them apart had instead reminded them of what truly mattered. It had forced honesty, reflection, and courage. And in choosing each other again, they didn't just repair what had been strained, they created a marriage that was stronger, more present, and more alive than ever before. No grand gestures, no dramatic endings. Just two people, fully present, fully committed, choosing each other every day, and finding joy, warmth, and love in the quiet rhythm of a shared life. The house was no longer a place of absence. It was home. And for Emily and Daniel, home had always been each other.